President Trump has just a handful of days left to decide whether he's going to unilaterally pull out of the nuclear deal with Iran. What would it mean if he did? Ernest Moniz was Energy Secretary under President Obama. Moniz and then Secretary of State John Kerry were the top U.S. officials in the talks between Iran and the world powers. Welcome, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Fareed.
So the first argument, and probably the central argument that President Trump makes about the Iran deal, about why he wants to pull out, is the so-called sunset clauses that he claimed in that press conference with the Nigerian president, that in 7 years, Iran can simply start rebuilding a nuclear weapons program. Is that true?
No, that's not really correct. The agreement, I should first say, has two principal pieces. One is for 15 years from 2016, Iran is highly constrained in what it can do in the nuclear arena. But even more important, the deal does not sunset because what was put in place were extraordinary monitoring and verification measures. And so the idea that once some of these nuclear constraints go off, that Iran is somehow free to run to a nuclear weapons program is just incorrect. Number one, well, they have, of course, committed to not pursuing a nuclear weapon in the agreement. But more importantly, before the agreement, we had no monitoring and verification measures. Now we have extraordinary ones. And that is the key, because obviously, if Iran were to restart a nuclear weapons program, I don't think they would be doing it in the open at facilities declared to the international inspectors. It would be a covert program, as it was before 2004. And it's the agreement that gives the inspectors the tools to look for those suspect sites.
Describe some of that, the verification, because, you know, IAEA experts have told me that they feel very comfortable with the level of the intrusive nature that there. For example, I think there are going to be cameras in the mines where you mine the uranium for 25 years or something like that.
That is correct. Iran is the only country in the world whose uranium supply chain will be under monitoring for 25 years. The IAEA has made very effective use of the ability supplied in the agreement to use all modern technology, special cameras, special seals, and the like. They have tremendous boots on the ground, lots and lots of images, lots of big data, if you like, to analyze in this case. So it's extraordinary in many ways.
The Secretary of Defense, Jim Mattis, said when asked about whether or not the agreement was intrusive enough, he said, "I've read the Iran deal, and it is designed for a country that we have assumed in the past has cheated. In other words, it's designed to prevent the very kind of cheating that Iran did in the past that Prime Minister Netanyahu, for example, pointed out this week."
That's right. And, much has been made of Prime Minister Netanyahu's exposure of these Iranian nuclear weapons plans for the period up to 2004. Again, we knew that. In fact, the American intelligence community published that in 2007. So we went into this agreement in some part because of the previous weapons program. We certainly went into the agreement with the attitude that, shall we say, went beyond President Reagan's statement about trust but verify. We said, don't trust and verify, verify, verify. So that's how that agreement was put together. That led to Secretary Mattis's reaction. And it's why to give up this agreement on our side would be a terrible mistake. In fact, if I may say, I think Prime Minister Netanyahu's presentation actually reinforces the need for the agreement, because I feel that while the presentation did not break new ground in terms of our knowing of there being a weapons program, given all the information, I would guess, upon analysis, it will reveal some new people, maybe places, equipment. All of those things need to be run to the ground. Frankly, Iran has put itself, by having this exposed, in a pretty tough spot. It is the process generated in the agreement that will allow those things to be run to the ground. And frankly, Iran's going to have a lot of explaining to do in terms of a bunch of specifics. That analysis will take some time because there is so much information. Once again, if we unilaterally break the agreement, we're going to give Iran a free pass on that.
What would happen, Secretary Moniz, if the United States unilaterally pulled out of this agreement?
Well, I think there's two main things. One, again, it will actually relieve pressure on Iran in multiple dimensions, including their need to respond to these recent Israeli discoveries. That's number one. But number two, and very, very serious, this would be an enormous wedge between us and our European allies in particular, who have been very, very forthcoming in saying they are willing to work with us on these other issues, but it must be in the context of the Iran agreement as a foundation for doing the rest of that. And frankly, it will be horribly messy because on the one hand, the European governments are saying that they want to stay with the agreement. On the other hand, if the president restores what are called secondary sanctions for doing business in Iran, a whole bunch of European countries will have no option, frankly, other than following those sanctions because they cannot be cut off from the American market and from American banks. And I might say that one of the more remarkable results in the negotiation in the first place was the coherence that was maintained between the United States, European allies, and even Russia and China. And I remind you, the agreement came a year after Russia's Ukraine incursion. And even then, we were able to work together on this issue of joint concern, Iranian nuclear weapons. So Iran, look, you can imagine in any negotiation, they are looking for wedges. They never succeeded in breaking apart this group of 6 countries. We would just be handing them a victory in a certain sense in that dimension.
Secretary Moniz, always a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, Fareed.
Iran lied. Big time.
That was the key message in Prime Minister Netanyahu's presentation to his people and the world on Monday. Taking a cue perhaps from the TV career of his ally, Donald Trump, Netanyahu played up the drama.
And here's what we got. 55,000 pages. Another 55,000 files on 183 CDs.
In the aftermath of the announcement, most experts agreed there was little new to what the Prime Minister had supposedly revealed, making his anti-Iranian case first in English and only then in Hebrew. Perhaps Bibi was talking to just one person, the man who will decide by May 12th whether the United States stays in the deal or pulls out. I wanted to get an Israeli perspective on the speech and got one from General Danny Yatom. He is a former head of Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency, and now a member of an organization of top Israeli retired generals who are concerned about the future of that nation. It is called Commanders for Israel's Security. General Yatom, pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zakaria.
So you are a former general, the former head of Mossad, former chief of staff to Barak, former military advisor to Rabin, and you studied physics in college. So I feel as though
in the university
you are perfectly qualified to tell me what to think of Bibi Netanyahu's presentation about the Iranian nuclear program.
I think that we have to be honest and say that we, the Israelis, and not only us, but also the Americans, those who are inside the issues, we did not see or hear anything else. We knew that the Iranians are cheating. We knew that the Iranians are lying. We knew that they had a military nuclear program. We knew that they hid it. But it is good for those that did not believe the Mossad and the others that the Iranians had it. Because look, until today, even after the presentation of Mr. Netanyahu, the Iranians say, no, we have never had a nuclear program for military purposes.
Now, since 2015, when the Iranians signed the nuclear deal, the IAEA, which has inspectors and cameras, says they have abided by it. U.S. intelligence confirms that, European intelligence does. Is it your understanding that Israeli intelligence also believes that since 2015, since the signing of the deal, Iran has abided by the terms of the deal?
I think that the answer is yes, but with some suspicions. Meaningly, we did not find any evidence that Iran breached the deal, but there were some information entered about a cooperation between North Korea and Iran. And when you ask yourself what kind of cooperation it can be or it could be, the only cooperation is a cooperation in the field of nuclear capabilities, and especially for military purposes.
What would your advice to President Trump be for his decision on May 12th? Should he adhere to the deal or should he withdraw?
I think that he should adhere to the deal. And I think that this is mainly, even though I agree, there are many, many holes in the deal. But this is the opportunity. And also after what was revealed by us about all those documents, this is a very good opportunity to come to the Iranians and to say, hey, look what we have found. We now have to make amendments and corrections in the deal.
If the United States walks away from the deal and Iran in response says, then we don't have to adhere to the deal, isn't that a worse situation for Israel? Because now Iran is free to pursue any kind of nuclear program at once.
You are 100% right. It is a worse situation. If the agreement collapses due to the withdrawal of the United States and immediately withdrawal of Iran, it will be the collapse of the agreement. And instead of being in an ordinary place, we'll be in a jungle, because everybody will do whatever he understands. And the Iranians might come back immediately to where they were left before the agreement. And this is to continue and to enrich uranium in order to achieve, in something like a year, a nuclear bomb.
Let me ask you about another issue that is very close to your heart. You're part of this group of almost 300 Israeli generals, former generals from Mossad, from Shin Bet, from the armed forces. Why have you all gotten together? What is the driving passion here?
We have many concerns about the future of the State of Israel. We want the State of Israel to exist forever as the only Jewish and democratic state. Now, between the sea and the Jordan River, there are approximately half Jews and half Palestinians. If there will not be a two-state solution that we are promoting, and the Prime Minister does not promote, and his government does not promote, we might find ourselves in a much worse situation, where the world will come to the rivals and say, you know what, we are fed of this struggle. You cannot find a way to live together side by side. Let's have one state. Once there is a one state to the two peoples, it means the end of the State of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state, because you can preserve Israel as Jewish and democratic only if under your sovereignty the majority of the population is Jewish. And between the Jordan and the sea, this is not the situation, even not today. So it is the destruction of the State of Israel.
General, pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zakaria.